They say every small town hides its secrets. Some bury them beneath the soil. Others keep them in plain sight. When my family and I left the city, I thought we were escaping our problems, that a quiet little town in the woods could fix what was broken between us. But peace doesn't come without a price. And some places don't let you leave once you've paid it. This is my story. It isn't a warning. It's a confession. I used to believe that love could survive anything distance time, even the slow erosion of everyday life. I was wrong. It was during one of our fights, after the screaming had finally burned itself out into a silence thick enough to choke on, that Kira said it. "Maybe we just need to get out of here," she whispered, staring at the wall instead of me. "Start somewhere new." Her voice trembled, brittle as glass. I remember thinking how strange it sounded, hopeful and defeated at the same time. I didn't believe a change of scenery would fix us. The rot wasn't in the walls or the city. It was in us. Still, when you're drowning, even a mirage looks like salvation. For months, our marriage had been unraveling, thread by thread, arguments over nothing nights spent back to back in bed, the air thick with unspoken resentment. Raising our daughter Lily had once been the one thing keeping us together, but even that was slipping away. I could see it in her eyes, the way she'd stare at us when we fought, quiet, unmoving, clutching that worn-out stuffed rabbit, like it was the only safe thing left in the world. Kira and I had met in high school. Our love used to burn. Now it only smoked a dull, choking haze. Every laugh we shared had turned to a sigh. Every touch, a reminder of what we'd lost. There were nights when I would lie awake, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator in the dark kitchen, and wonder if she was doing the same in the next room, both of us trapped in the same house, but worlds apart. We told ourselves we were staying together for Lily. That's what people always say before everything breaks. That night, after Kira's suggestion hung between us like a wound, I looked at her and realized we were already ghosts in our own lives. "Okay," I said. "Let's go." 2 words. That's all it took to set everything in motion. I didn't know then that I'd just agreed to bury my family alive. The drive was quiet, not peaceful, just the kind of silence that stretches so long it starts to hum. We packed what was left of our lives into cardboard boxes, loaded them into the old SUV, and drove until the city faded behind us. Kira sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, her face pale in the reflection. Lily hummed softly in the back seat, her stuffed rabbit squeezed tight against her chest. No one said much, maybe because we'd already said everything that could be said. For a while, I let myself believe we were shedding the poison mile by mile. The skyline disappeared, replaced by rolling fields and broken fences by the sort of landscape that seems untouched by time. The air outside the car grew cleaner, colder. I rolled the window down, just enough to feel it scrape against my skin, like something new. By the time the sun began to set, the GPS was already leading us down narrow back roads surrounded by towering pines. The shadows between them grew thicker the farther we drove, until it felt like the trees were bending closer, watching us pass. When we finally reached the town, I almost didn't notice it. A single gas station, a diner, a row of old wooden houses painted in the same dull shades of white and gray. There was something still about it. The kind of stillness you find in photographs, not in living places. Our new home stood at the end of a short gravel driveway, framed by a white picket fence and a yard that needed mowing. It looked harmless, quiet, ordinary. Kira smiled faintly when she saw it, and for the first time in months, I saw a flicker of the woman I fell in love with. We unpacked in silence, working together without speaking. Lily ran through the empty rooms, laughing, her footsteps echoing off the bare walls. For a moment, it almost felt like we'd made the right choice. That night after she fell asleep, Kira and I sat on the porch and watched the dark swallow the last streaks of sunset. The crickets sang. Somewhere in the distance, I thought I heard running water. "This place feels different," she said softly. "Yeah," I replied. "It does." I wanted to believe it. I really did. But beneath that quiet night air, beneath the scent of pine and fresh earth, I felt something else, like the town was holding its breath, waiting for us to belong to it. We met her on the second day. The air was still heavy with the smell of fresh paint and cardboard when I noticed someone standing at the edge of our driveway. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, just another shape among the tall pines. But then she waved. She was an older woman, maybe late 60s. Her silver hair was pulled into a tight bun, and she wore a knitted sweater despite the heat. She smiled wide and practiced, and walked toward us, carrying a plate of cookies. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, her voice sing-song and too sweet. "I'm Margaret. It's lovely to see a young family move in." There was something in her tone, something rehearsed, like she'd said those exact words too many times before. Kira smiled, polite but cautious. "That's so kind of you, thank you." I forced a smile too, but Margaret's eyes didn't stay on us for long. They drifted past me toward Lily. Our daughter had just come out onto the porch, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Margaret's grin tightened. "She's beautiful," she said softly. "Thank you," I replied, stepping slightly in front of Lily without realizing it. Margaret's eyes flicked up to mine, steady and unreadable. "She's full of life," she murmured. "That's rare around here." Before I could respond, I noticed someone else standing behind her. A girl. She looked about Lily's age, but there was something off about her. She didn't move, didn't fidget or blink, just stared at us with eyes too dark and too still. Her skin was pale like paper, and her expression empty. "This is Clara," Margaret said, without turning around. "Say hello, dear." The girl didn't answer. She just stood there, silent, like a puppet, waiting for strings. Margaret chuckled softly. "She's shy." We exchanged a few more pleasantries before she mentioned something I didn't expect. "If someone hasn't told you already," she said, her tone lowering, "there's a wishing well in town. It's tradition for newcomers to visit it. You should take Lily. The well brings good fortune to those who offer a coin and a wish." "A wishing well," I repeated, trying to sound interested. "Yes," she said, and her eyes gleamed in a way that made my skin crawl. "It's been part of this town for generations. Everyone pays their respects eventually." I nodded, unsure of what to say. Kira thanked her again, and we watched as she turned to leave. The pale girl followed, moving slowly, like her limbs didn't quite belong to her. When they disappeared around the corner, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "That was odd," I said. Kira shrugged. "She's probably just friendly. Small towns are like that." Maybe she was right. But as the sun dipped behind the pines and the crickets started their evening chorus, I couldn't shake the image of Margaret's smile or the way her eyes lingered on my daughter, as if she was remembering something she'd already lost. The talk about the wishing well followed me everywhere. At first, it was just Margaret's strange suggestion, something to laugh about over dinner. But soon it started to echo through the town. At the grocery store, the cashier mentioned it while bagging my things. The well changed my life, she said, smiling in that same practiced way I'd seen before. Her eyes were wide too bright. At work, my co-workers talked about it too. One claimed his marriage had improved after visiting the well. Another said he'd gotten a promotion right after tossing a coin into it. They all used the same tone, cheerful but distant, as if they were remembering a dream instead of something real. I brushed it off as superstition. Small towns always have their little rituals. But the more I heard about it, the more it started to itch at the back of my mind. Then came that night. Kira and I had one of our worst fights yet. I don't even remember what started it, something stupid as always. Dishes left in the sink, a snide remark, years of bitterness, piling up until it collapsed under its own weight. I left the house before I said something I couldn't take back. The air outside was cold and sharp, biting at my face. I walked without thinking, following the narrow streets until the houses gave way to trees. I must have been walking for hours when I found it. The forest opened into a clearing, and there it was, the well. It was old, built of stone, darkened by age and moss. The wooden roof above it sagged slightly, and a rusted bucket hung motionless over the mouth. The air around it was unnaturally still. Even the crickets were silent. I approached, feeling a pull I couldn't explain. The stone was cold beneath my fingers, slick with moisture. When I leaned over the edge, I expected to see water, but there was only blackness, so deep it felt like it was swallowing the light from my phone screen. That's when I heard it. You came. I turned, and there she was, Margaret. She stood a few feet away, her face half lit by the moon. I hadn't heard her approach. I didn't mean to, I stammered. I was just walking. She smiled. It was the same smile she'd given us the day we arrived, only sharper now. It's all right to feel lost, she said. The well helps those who need it most. Her voice was calm, soothing even, but there was something behind it, a hunger I couldn't name. I don't believe in that stuff, I muttered. Belief isn't required, she said softly. Only the act. She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto mine. You've been struggling, she whispered. You want things to be better, for her, for your family. My heart pounded. Somehow she knew. Margaret tilted her head, and her eyes flicked down to my hand. A coin, she said, and a wish. I didn't even remember reaching into my pocket, but there it was, a quarter dull and warm from my grip. Go on, she said. My throat felt dry. I didn't know what to wish for. Peace, happiness. For Kira and I to stop tearing each other apart. In the end, I whispered the only thing that came to mind. I just want everything to be better. The coin slipped from my fingers and vanished into the dark. I never heard it hit the bottom. Margaret's smile widened. That's all it takes, she said, turning away. I stood there a moment longer, staring into the void. I don't know what I expected to feel, relief, maybe, or hope. But there was nothing. Just silence. When I finally looked up again, Margaret was gone. I walked home under the heavy stillness of the woods, the echo of her voice tangled in my thoughts. That night, I dreamed of the well. Only this time, when I looked down, it wasn't empty. Something was staring back. The next morning felt lighter. I woke up to the smell of pancakes. Kira was in the kitchen, humming softly, her hair tied up the way she used to when we were first married. The table was set, sunlight spilling through the window. For a moment, I thought I was still dreaming. "Morning," she said, smiling, actually smiling. It caught me off guard. We hadn't had a morning like that in years. Lily sat at the table syrup, smeared across her cheek, giggling as Kira pretended to steal her breakfast. I sat down cautious, as if the smallest movement might break whatever spell had settled over the house. But it didn't. We laughed together, and for once the silence between us was warm. That feeling carried into the days that followed. Work called to tell me my hours had been restored, and with a raise, no less. Kira started painting again, her old canvases returning to life with color. The nights were quiet, filled with soft conversations and the occasional shared glass of wine. Even Lily seemed different, happier. The circles under her eyes had faded, and she played outside until the sun went down, chasing butterflies along the picket fence. The whole town seemed to know. Everywhere we went, people smiled and congratulated us. They spoke in that same cheerful, eerie way, like they all shared a secret. "Feels good, doesn't it?" one of my coworkers said, when the wish comes true. I froze. "What?" He just grinned and clapped me on the shoulder. "Welcome to the family." The words echoed in my head long after he walked away. That night, Kira sat beside me on the couch, leaning against my shoulder. "Maybe this place really is good for us," she murmured. I wanted to agree to let myself believe that everything had simply fallen into place. But something about it felt too clean, too perfect. I noticed little things. The neighbor across the street mowing his lawn at the exact same time every evening. The cashier at the grocery store repeating the same phrase every time I checked out, "Enjoy your blessings." And sometimes, when I looked at the people around town, their smiles didn't quite reach their eyes. But I pushed the thoughts aside. After everything we'd been through, I didn't want to question happiness. It was easier to pretend it was all real. It was easier to forget the sound of the coin hitting nothing. It started with the screams, Lily's to be exact. The first time, it was just after midnight. A cry ripped through the silence like a blade. Kira and I ran to her room, hearts pounding, expecting to find her hurt. She sat upright in bed, trembling, clutching that ragged stuffed rabbit. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. "There's something outside my window," she whispered. It was talking to me. I rushed to the window and pulled the curtains back. Nothing. Just the yard bathed in pale moonlight. The trees swayed gently in the wind, but the air felt too still, too heavy. Kira wrapped her arms around Lily. "It was just a dream," she said softly, but her voice wavered. We let Lily sleep in our bed that night. It took her hours to calm down. When she finally drifted off, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening for anything, any sound that didn't belong. The next night, it happened again. And the one after that. Each time Lily's screams grew sharper, her voice more desperate. She stopped playing outside. Her laughter disappeared. Shadows formed under her eyes. Kira and I were unraveling again, our peace slipping through our fingers like sand. I tried to convince myself it was just nightmares, some adjustment phase. Kids had wild imaginations, right? But deep down, I knew something was wrong with this town. I began noticing other things. The sky always seemed overcast now, even when the weather forecast said otherwise. Trash started appearing on the streets, small things at first, candy wrappers, broken glass. The smell of rot lingered in the air, faint but constant. The people changed too. Their smiles became hollow, their greetings mechanical. I'd catch glimpses of them standing still at odd hours, staring off into nothing. It was like the entire town was decaying slowly from the inside out. Then came the night. Lily didn't scream. I woke to the sound of the wind howling outside. A strange kind of silence filled the house, the kind that feels wrong, too deep, too deliberate. I went to check on her. The door creaked open to a cold draft. The curtains were fluttering. The window was wide open. Her bed was empty. My heart stopped. I shouted her name, tearing through every room, every hallway. Nothing. I ran outside barefoot, my voice echoing through the dead streets. No answer, only the wind. When the police arrived, I expected panic, urgency, anything. Instead, they stood there calm, detached. She probably ran off, the older officer said. Happens all the time around here. She's 7, I screamed. She wouldn't just run off. He gave me a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. Don't worry, she'll turn up. They always do. The words froze my blood. That tone, the same one the townspeople used when they spoke about the well. Cheerful, empty, rehearsed. The younger officer looked uncomfortable. His gaze darted between me and his partner, lips pressed tight, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. They left after 15 minutes. Kira collapsed in my arms, sobbing until her voice was gone. The next 48 hours were hell. I searched everywhere, woods, alleys, abandoned houses. I knocked on every door. People smiled, nodded, and told me not to worry. Some even congratulated me. That's when I started hearing it, whispers through half-open doors as I walked away. The same words over and over. Tradition, the well. I knew then. Somehow it all tied back to that place. To Margaret. I went to her house that night, pounding on the door until my fists hurt. No answer. But deep down, I knew where she'd be. The woods were darker than I remembered. The air was colder, thicker. My flashlight flickered as I reached the clearing. She was waiting. Margaret stood beside the well, her pale face glowing faintly in the moonlight. She smiled when she saw me like she'd been expecting me all along. You understand now, don't you? She said gently. The well gives, but it also takes. My voice shook. What did you do? The price, she said simply. You wished for a better life. The well granted it. But everything comes with a cost. I felt the world tilt around me. What cost? She stepped closer, her smile growing sharp. Did you really think a wish that big would only cost a coin? Her words hollowed me out. You must choose, she said softly. As we all have before. Your daughter or your wife. One will stay. One will go. I wanted to laugh, scream, deny it. But deep down, I knew the truth. The well hadn't just taken Lily. It was offering a trade. You have 24 hours, Margaret whispered. Make your choice. And then she was gone. I stood alone in the clearing, the black mouth of the well yawning before me, the air so cold it hurt to breathe. 24 hours. That was all I had to decide. Who would live and who would disappear forever? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the well. I heard Margaret's voice, soft, patient, as if she already knew what I would decide. 24 hours. Kira sat on the couch, motionless, staring at the front door. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling around a cold cup of tea. She hadn't spoken since the police left. I didn't tell her what Margaret had said. I couldn't. How do you tell someone that the universe has decided your family is a currency? The morning passed in silence. The town looked normal, but not alive. The people walking their dogs, trimming their hedges, smiling, always smiling. I could feel it in the air. They all knew. They'd all made their choice once. By nightfall, I couldn't bear it anymore. I went back to the woods. Margaret was waiting, of course. She stood by the well hands, folded her face, lit by the moon. Her smile was smaller this time, almost sympathetic. "Have you made your choice?" she asked. I wanted to scream, to run, to throw her into that black pit and drag Lily back out of it. But I couldn't move. "I can't choose," I said. My voice broke. "You can't ask me to do that." Margaret tilted her head. "You already did when you made your wish. This is just the other half of the bargain." I swallowed hard, my throat raw. "What happens if I don't?" Her expression darkened. "Then the well decides for you. And trust me, it's not merciful." The forest was silent, waiting. I thought about Kira, how broken she'd become, how tired. And I thought of Lily, her small hands gripping her rabbit, her laughter before the darkness came. My body was shaking when I whispered, "I choose my daughter." Margaret nodded, once her face unreadable. "It will be done." Then she turned and walked into the trees, vanishing into the dark, like she'd never been there. When I got home, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I found Kira sitting on the edge of our bed, her face soft calm. She looked up at me and smiled the kind of smile you give someone before saying goodbye. "I'm sorry," she said. I wanted to tell her everything to take it back, but the words wouldn't come. That night, I held her as she fell asleep. Her breathing slowed. I stayed awake until dawn, afraid that if I closed my eyes, she'd disappear. When morning came, the bed beside me was cold. There was no sign of struggle, no trace she'd ever been there at all. And then from down the hall, I heard it, a small voice. "Daddy." I ran to Lily's room. She was there, her hair messy, her eyes fluttering open, as if waking from a long dream. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd done the right thing. But then I saw her eyes. They were dull, empty, like the light inside her had been switched off. She looked at me, but there was no recognition, no warmth, just a hollow stare that mirrored my own. I knelt beside her bed, my chest collapsing under the weight of what I'd done. I had saved my daughter's body, but whatever made her Lily, the well had taken that too. Days passed, though they barely felt like days. Time moved differently after that night, slower, heavier, like the air itself didn't want to let me breathe. Lily was home again, but she wasn't Lily. She moved through the house like a ghost, quiet and obedient. She never smiled, never asked for bedtime stories. Sometimes I'd catch her standing in the hallway at night, facing the wall, whispering words I couldn't understand. I tried to pretend things were normal, but even pretending hurt. The silence between us wasn't peaceful anymore. It was suffocating. Then one afternoon, I saw her. Not Lily. Her. The little girl who used to stand behind Margaret. The pale, lifeless one. Only now she wasn't lifeless. She was running down the street, laughing, her face glowing with color. Other children chased her, their laughter echoing in the sunlight. She looked alive. My stomach turned cold. It hit me all at once. The stillness, the smiles, the strange calm of this town. The well didn't grant wishes. It just moved the pieces around. One family's happiness was carved out of another's loss. Margaret hadn't lied when she said everyone paid a price. She just never said whose. I stood there on the sidewalk, watching that little girl laugh, and for a moment, I swore she looked straight at me. Her eyes were bright, familiar Lily's eyes. My knees nearly gave out. I stumbled home shaking. Inside, Lily sat on the living room floor, staring blankly at her stuffed rabbit. The light through the window caught her face, and for just a second it wasn't hers anymore. It was Margaret's. That's when I understood. The well hadn't finished with me. Not yet. I started noticing the signs again, subtle at first. The faint whisper of running water whenever the house went quiet. The echo of laughter in the distance, even when the streets were empty. And then one morning, I saw it. A for sale sign just a few doors down. A young couple was standing by the mailbox holding hands, a little girl tugging at their sleeves, asking if there were parks nearby. I watched from the window as Margaret walked up the street to greet them, that same warm, rehearsed smile on her face. She carried a plate of cookies, the same kind she'd brought us. I looked back at Lily. Her lips were moving again, whispering words too soft to hear. The sound of water filled the house, steady, endless, like the bottomless echo of the well. I should warn them, tell them to run. But my mouth wouldn't open, my hands wouldn't move. I just stood there staring, realizing what I'd become. Maybe this is how it starts every time. Maybe every family that comes here believes they're escaping something, never knowing they're stepping into a trap that never ends. I looked at the for sale sign again. The couple smiled, shaking Margaret's hand. The little girl waved at Lily through our window. And Lily, she waved back. Her eyes were bright this time. Maybe it's time for another family to make a wish. If you ever find yourself driving down a forgotten back road and come across a town that looks too quiet, too perfect, keep driving. Because somewhere behind those smiling faces, beneath the cracked pavement and the picket fences, there's always a well. And if someone offers you a coin, don't take it. Trust me, no wish is ever worth the price.